Hello, everyone. Today we have with us Dr. Samantha Pillay, all the way from Australia, which is one of my favorite I want to go to places. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bobby. It's fantastic to be here, all the way over the internet.
I'm going to be so excited about your accent all show, so that's a bonus. I'm excited to have you here because you have a couple different missions, like you said, and you have a pretty interesting story. So do you want to kick it off and introduce yourself to my listeners?
Where do I start? I am a surgeon in Adelaide, South Australia. I specialize in the field of urology or urinary tract surgery, and I subspecialize within that field on focusing on incontinence surgery. So urinary incontinence, which is predominantly patients are female. I don't just treat female, but they're the majority of my patients. So that's what I do. But it's only part of what I do. It's kind of evolved. I have been in what we call private practice in Australia for 20 years. And I set up my own business. So I'm also a solopreneur, mumpreneur, founder, director of a surgical practice, which I started because I wanted to build a center of excellence that focused on urinary incontinence, that really showcased it as important. I felt it didn't get enough attention. So I've ended up, like a lot of entrepreneurs, starting a business with absolutely no experience. And 20 years later, I can tell you I've learned a lot along the way. And then I have gone out and decided that, I'm in my 50s. What else can I do to make an imprint on this planet before I leave it? And there were two big things that I suppose were important to me, and that was women in leadership, the barriers that I had to overcome. I was the first female in South Australia to train in the field of urology, and by the time I finished my 14 years of training, less than 4% of surgeons in Australia were female. So I have embarked on a children's picture book series, which I'm sure we'll talk about more. And then I have also passionate about health. I realized that as a surgeon, what I can do to help people with their health is nothing compared to what they can do to help themselves. And so I'm keen to motivate people to help them make those changes they need to make, because prevention is better than what I can offer.
I love that. And, it's an important, everything about you is impressive, but the incontinence problem, I've heard of so many people struggling with it, women, but I even had an uncle recently that went through that struggle, which I would have thought it was exclusive to women. So just learning that was kind of interesting. And now I'm getting old, like dive for a ball at volleyball or cough wrong, it's just old age. But anyway, I didn't realize that only 4% of the country surgeons were females.
That was when I finished. Fast track 20 years, and now it's about 13%. If you include New Zealand, it's closer to 14%. So it's really low, but the figures in the US aren't any better. I think the worst is orthopedic surgery. 8% of orthopedic surgeons are female, and there was a paper last year that calculated at the current trajectory, compounding with the current acquisition rates, it was going to take 326 years for there to be equal gender in orthopedic surgery in the US.
See, I think Grey's Anatomy has
that.
tainted us all. Do you watch Grey's Anatomy? That television show?
I don't watch Grey's Anatomy. I'm not a big TV watcher, I must admit. Most of those things for doctors, it's like, roll your eyes. That's not what it's like, obvious. And I think people obviously know things are going to be dramatized.
That was my point exactly, is, it's probably a 50-50 split, or maybe even more women on that show that are surgeons. So that was my point exactly, is we're getting false information. If you watch a show like that, you think that in a hospital environment or even a private practice, that's what it looks like. And it's just not. So
yeah. And people are so overworked and stressed, it's just so funny because I always make people look good, obviously, on those. It's like, come to work and I'm like, I haven't washed my hair for a week. I don't have any makeup on. Everyone's got bags under their eyes and stressed out. No one looks fantastic.
So why did you pick that? Do you mind me asking? Can I go backwards a little? Like, why did you pick that? Was there intrigue?
Yeah. At urology, there was a number of different reasons. I knew I wanted to do surgery, and that was a problem. There's a lot of gender issues. In those days it was like, great for a woman to do medicine, but doing surgery, what, don't you want to have kids? And so it wasn't seen as a family-friendly career, but that wasn't my only barrier. I was born with congenital hip dysplasia and it wasn't picked up. I failed to walk. I started school in a wheelchair. I had multiple operations and learnt to walk. I had limited mobility and a lot of restriction and 24-hour pain, which I know that sounds awful, but I actually had it from birth, so I didn't actually know any different. It was just something I had to manage. So everyone said, it wasn't, oh, you can't do surgery because you're a woman. It's like, you can't do surgery because you can't stand and operate. That meant that one of the factors was I was looking for a specialty where I didn't want to do neurosurgery, brain surgery, because often the operations are like, 10 hours. So I had to choose a specialty where the operations were more likely to be short procedures. And then urology is one where a lot of the surgery is done sitting down. And then within that, I subspecialized in an area where most of my surgery was short procedures sitting down. So that was a factor. Then obviously there were other factors. It was interesting. No female had ever done it. There was a sort of niche area I felt I could really make a difference. There was no surgeons in South Australia who were specialising in incontinence surgery. And subspecialisation 20 years ago really hadn't taken off in Australia. It had in the US, but not in Australia. And so I was the first surgeon in Australia to exclusively subspecialise in what we'd call female or functional urology, meaning I didn't do the other stuff, the prostates, the stones, the cancers and stuff. So that was how I ended up in that area. There were lots of other factors, but they're the main ones.
Sounds like you've overcome a tremendous amount and that you're a brilliant woman. So it's very impressive. Thank you for sharing that with us. So tell me a little bit. I want to hit all three of your big topics. And I love how you rolled them all in together, from doctor to health to the children's books, which I love the graphics on, by the way. So we got to make sure we share those everywhere because it's quite lovely. So what kind of things are you doing to influence people on the health front? What do you want to encourage them to do? What does that look like for you?
60% of people in the US have a chronic disease. 40% have two chronic diseases. The World Health Organization has estimated that 80% of heart disease, diabetes, stroke are preventable. 40% of cancers are preventable. And you think of how our healthcare system struggles and the cost to our healthcare system. And then look at most of that could actually be prevented. But the only person can do something is the individual. Now, there's no shortage of information out there. So there's a lot of people who want to have a healthier life. People are living longer. And so, if you're going to live to 100 and your life is crap from 50 to 100 because you've got struggling with disability from chronic disease that was preventable, what you do in the first 50 years really determines the quality of life in your second 50 years. The problem is all those little things you do every day might take decades to materialize. So my sort of message is invest now or pay later. It's about trying to help people find the motivation. If you actually suddenly prioritize your health, like it is the most important thing, it's more important than money, it's more important than career, there's nothing that's more important, maybe your kids, or family, then that gives people the power. People are capable of doing amazing things, but it's just helping it rise to the top of the list. There's plenty of information out there that can help people once they want to lose weight or change their diet or quit smoking, that can help them do that. The difficulty is not those resources, but the difficulty is people prioritizing, staying motivated, getting back on track when they lose their way, and just continuing to keep on every day and never give up. And once they've got that self-belief that they can do it, and they're totally committed to the cause, then they'll find those resources. It's that first step that's missing. The resources are there, people just aren't going out there. And I think you've had a lot to do with addiction and recovery, and I am sure it's the same thing. The big thing is people going, I have to do something about this, no matter what. And then the rest falls into place. So helping people get that aha moment.
That's exactly right. And if it's the 12-step point of view, it's my life has become unmanageable, which I can definitely see the correlation between that and physical health. Because, you know, if you're taking pills for cholesterol, or you can't walk up a flight of stairs, or whatever all those things are that start happening. So what do you do to get people? Well, I guess you can't get people to do anything. I should rephrase that, huh?
Yes, I'm hoping that, so I'm just starting on that journey through public speaking to raise awareness. And I also sort of write articles on my website and through social media to try and create that movement of people that are motivated to do something about their health. Now, the things that you were talking about were really it's too late moment with the doctor when they sort of say, you've got diabetes, you've got high blood pressure, you've got pre-diabetes. But it's even earlier than that, and it really needs to start in kids, definitely, because we want to prevent it, you know. So whether it's putting on sunscreen, you know, 50% of Americans are going to get skin cancer. More people are diagnosed in the US with skin cancer from solarium than lung cancer from smoking. So there's a lot of information that people just don't get. And so trying to get those statistics is one aspect of trying to resonate with people going, oh, hang on, it's not just about waiting until I get puffed going up the stairs. There's 10 years potentially of what happens before you get to that point, maybe 20. And trying to reverse it when the damage is done is too late. Things like salt, 1 in 3 Americans have high blood pressure. 75% of the salt comes from restaurant processed meals, takeout, and the average American eats out or takes out 5 times a week. It's not that salt you add in your food. And the CDC estimates that there's more salt in a restaurant meal than fast food. So there's things that people just aren't aware of that they're just doing to their bodies every day.
That was startling. I would have never thought that. So there's myths that you're really trying to break through and get the right information.
Yeah.
You gave me so much to process there. So I was taking a second. When you talked about, you referred to the first 50 years and the second 50 years. And I've recently had a mind shift change about this. You know how they say, I wish I knew then what I know now. I'm going to be 48 next month, and I'm starting to look at my 50th birthday as my first birthday, like to take everything I've learned in this part of life. And now it's like my do-over, like that I do have everything that I could learn. So that just really caught my attention because that's a recent shift for me. And you're also inspiring me to make some changes, probably even sooner than 50. But that's what it feels like.
Good. It's working.
Yeah.
That's what I'm here for.
Well, I definitely still have my cigarettes. And although I cut back, I have this I call it my addictude. Well, I gave up gambling. I gave up drinking. I should still be okay to have cigarettes and sugar. Like it's a mindset thing. Right. And they're two horrible things.
It could be something else, like maybe, shift to coffee or something that might not be perfect, but it's not quite so bad. So the other thing is, this might so for every person that dies from smoking related disease, there's 30 people that don't die and are living with chronic severe disease as a result of their smoking.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So the thing, people, it's not like, oh, well, if it's going to get me, it's going to get me kind of thing. No, that's not really how it works. It's do you want to have younger looking skin? Do you want to be able to travel? Do you want to be able to shower and feed yourself? Do you want to be able to live independently? Because you see, as a healthcare provider, I see all the people that can't do that. I've retired, but, all they do is spend a fortune going to doctors to look after all of their chronic preventable diseases because of their lifestyles that they have to their life, and they can't actually live the life. And they might spend 20, 30 years, their last 20 or 30 years like that.
That sounds scarier than giving up cigarettes. And I probably shouldn't have admitted that to you. I'm sorry.
We will have you off. You've already had your last cigarette.
Oh, I see what you're doing. There's potential for that.
And it is about finding what different things resonate with different people. Like, for some people, you're about to turn 50. You realize if you smoke, you're going to look like you're 60 when you're 50.
Okay. All right. I got to switch gears. So you keep saying, which I think is interesting, and I think you're doing it for my benefit, but you keep saying the states, you're comparing the United States stats to Australia.
Yeah.
So what happens in Australia maybe differently that here? Is the health better there? Is the message still needed in all different places? I just asked like 6 questions at the same time, but
yeah,
I get what I'm saying.
It depends. So the stats are different, but I won't go into them, but it might be, we have same rates of salt in our diet. We're just as bad. We're not as bad on obesity and overweight, but we're not far behind. We have worse for skin cancer. 70% of Australians have skin cancer by the age of 70 because of our sun. So there's little differences. A lot of people think the States is really bad on health. But it's surprising in Australia that there's some areas that we are the same or worse.
Okay. I was just trying to understand the landscape around that. So it sounds like some of your strategies is awareness, maybe making people feel a little guilty, or letting them, I feel guilty. You didn't make me feel guilty. I feel guilty telling you that, even saying it to my doctor, normal. So what are some of the other strategies to get people at least thinking about making the shift?
Yes, I think thinking about how it can impact on your everyday life. So it's really easy to make excuses, which is what you're talking about already. Oh, I gave up this, so surely I can have this, my cigarettes. One of the interesting things that and for me, education has been really important. And I think for a lot of people, exactly, it's like, oh, I didn't realize that. It makes them think. And when I've been speaking, I've had people where, all I need is one person who says, oh my God, you changed my life. I mean, that is the best thing ever. Obviously, helping people is something that I'm passionate about, which led me to become a surgeon. And so through writing or speaking, if I'm doing that, it's very rewarding as well. I started to look at low-level alcohol consumption, because I was, in my late 40s, same sort of as you. And I was thinking, so many people I know drink a lot. I might have 2 or 3 glasses of wine, but God, someone else was just, off the scale. And it's very easy to justify what I did when you see other people who are heavy drinkers, right? I was just a social drinker, busy, stressed out surgeon, come home, have a glass of wine, we cook dinner, etc. What I would call low level, right? And then I looked at, the sort of government websites, even in the US, and it's like moderate alcohol is 1 to 2 glasses a day. And I was like, I thought that was light, not moderate. And then I started to look at all the risks of cancer, with just 3 glasses of wine a week increases your risk of breast cancer, and the risks of cancer associated with alcohol, the stuff that high level alcohol causes, like, severe anxiety. And I thought to myself, I'm so stressed out, I want a glass of wine. What happens if the low level alcohol is causing anxiety? Because you actually when you escape a problem, the next morning, the problem's still there. You don't actually use that time to solve the problem or gain the life skills you need to be able to deal with stress. And if you just spend your life having a drink when you're stressed, fast track 20 years, you have the same skills at dealing with problems in life as you did when you were 20, when you were 40. And, that's not growing up. So I thought it's not sort of affecting my sleep, etc. Anyway, I sort of looked at it like, I don't think this is good for me. Why do we all think, like if I went out and had a drink, I thought I was going to have fun, right? Well, I didn't have more fun. And, I was, you're just not on your best behavior. You're not as interesting person. You don't have a great conversation. Your social skills aren't as good. Like everything was just not as good. And once I saw it for what it was like this stupid myth we'd been sold that it relaxed me, and it didn't. It made me have fun, didn't. It made me look better, didn't. Or whatever it was. I wrote this article that people can read on my website, where I've written some articles about my journey with low level. Anyway, I stopped wanting it, and I haven't had a drink since before COVID. But it's not like I consciously said I'm giving up alcohol. It's not like I said I've got to stop drinking, and it's not like I'd be thinking, oh, I really would like a drink, but I'm not going to. It was none of that. It's like, it's for non-smokers. If you offered a non-smoker a cigarette, they're like, no, I don't want it. They're not like thinking, oh, I'd really like to have that, but I won't.
Right.
Two different things. So by becoming more healthy, the same thing has happened, whether it's processed meat or something high in salt. I'm thinking, I really want to put that in my body. And so I think if we prioritize our health and prioritize our bodies and have that self-respect, that helps motivate us to take care of the greatest asset we have.
I really appreciate you sharing that alcohol stuff. That was quite interesting. My journey, and this is where my rationalization comes from, was it wasn't hard for me to quit drinking. And quite honestly, when I went to rehab, people were asking me, are you going to rehab for gambling or drinking? Because both had ramped up so much. And I don't really miss drinking. So in my head, I tie in this mental health component, like this, almost like I'll be healed or have peace about whatever it is that was causing me to have the stress to drink. So whatever stressors are left are the ones that I might blame to smoke. Again, it's all just the self-talk and the way that I frame it to justify smoking, which I totally get. And it's kind of fun talking about this. What I haven't heard much, we talk a lot in the addiction world with alcohol, but a lot of it has to do, again, more with the mental health perspective. I've never had a guest on my shows, either of them, where we talked about it from the physical health perspective, quite how you just said it. Like, I didn't think about alcohol being connected to cancer.
Right. Okay. It's huge. Yeah, it's absolutely huge. So I probably can't recall all of the stats, but as I say, I wrote this 3,000 word article on my website, so samanthapillay.com. And what I did was I actually looked at the parallels of the history of smoking to alcohol. Things like smoking was so ingrained in society that even doctors promoted it, right? Things like the biggest predictor was if parents smoked, and the most likely way for people to get addicted is they started smoking young, like at the age of 18. And that people really didn't appreciate the cancer causing effects of smoking. And then if they had known what smoking would cause, they never would have allowed it to be released in the first place. The point of what I'm saying is everything that they say about that is true for alcohol.
Oh,
You definitely should read my article. It's called Will Drinking Ever Go Out of Fashion?
okay. Yeah. I mean, when I think of physical illness with drinking, I think of cirrhosis, or I think of seizures from withdrawal. Like, I think of things that I've seen in my life with the people around me, or accidents if they're drunk driving, like I think of that. I've never drawn that correlation. So just that is huge. And I
think it's about 8 cancers.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so disturbing.
So
okay.
Once I researched it, I'm like I look at every glass and go, oh my God, it's like, what do I want to put that in my body for? And once you start to think about that with food as well, yeah, then, it helps. So the idea is it's a bit of a snowball. If you think about all the things that you can do to damage your health, it's all the little things you do every day that add up over the years. It's the same with health. Once you start thinking, I'm going to put on sunscreen because, I don't want wrinkles and skin cancer. I'm going to brush my teeth because, I don't want to be spending a fortune in my latter years on dental treatment. Once you start having that mindset, every little thing you do that helps your health, it adds strength to the next thing. You're more likely to make a healthier choice with food. You're more likely to not have those cancer-forming cigarettes or alcohol or whatever. Because once you start thinking health, you've got one body, one life, no second chance. You can come up with all the excuses in the world. You can say, my aunt smoked till she was 100 and whatever. Okay. And so when you come to see me and I go, you've got bladder cancer, you can list 100 excuses. It's not going to change your circumstances one bit.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. So I'm going to use me as an example because I'm guessing there's probably a lot of me's out there, not necessarily with the smoking, but when looking at yourself holistically or trying to do the right thing, I've studied diet and vitamins and all those things, you know, did the vegetarian phase, did a lot of different exploration. And I'm still very unclear. To your point, there's a lot of information out there, almost to a fault. And I will be aware of my health. Like I'll make an effort to go on walks, to go to Zumba class, to only keep things in the house. I'm trying to do this 3 ingredients or less. So fresh fruit and, you know, that kind of stuff. And then of course there is like things like the cigarettes in the background, or if I'm out, dessert is like my kryptonite, for example. So do you see a lot of people that have some of the good and some of the bad? Is that more than the normal?
That's right. It's that's what I'm trying to help is the people that want to do the right thing, but they struggle and they have setbacks. And I think part of my motivation comes from the fact that I was born with a condition that I couldn't do anything about. And that was like, well, okay, why would I then do the wrong thing about something I could do something about? And that is very similar to people who say have a really unhealthy lifestyle and then have a heart attack and then they make the change. I was kind of born with that aha moment. So trying to sort of connect with those people and give them some uses. So you might, I don't know if you know this, the first book I wrote was a cookbook, which everyone goes, you're a surgeon, you wrote a cookbook. It's called the No Recipe Cookbook. It was a cookbook for people who don't cook. It was to get kitchen phobes into the kitchen and end the Uber Eats generation because of the health side of it. So it's written in prose, there's no recipes, there's no pictures. It's a simple repertoire of meals, shopping once every 2 weeks, because I was time poor, that you can cook fast and quick, depending on whatever ingredients you want. And part of that comes from the processed food, the packaged foods, the eat out, the takeaways, etc. So trying to get those skills there for people to make those changes. But as with all the things that you're struggling with, the more you start thinking about your health from every aspect, if you sort of do a health checklist and think of all the things that you're doing, and then hopefully, again, some of the facts about the risks associated with whether it's processed meat or whatever, that, you know, that you makes you become what I call self-care aware. And so what I try and talk to people about is it's going to take time, get to A for B, but you're going to start building your health armor one piece at a time. So, but when you look at all the things you've got to do, you realize 2 paths. You could be going down that path or this path. And that's one of the things that I had as a teenager with my hips. I kind of went, oh, okay, I've got chronic pain, limited mobility. Like if I just sort of wallow in self-pity and don't look after myself, I'm going to end up on disability income and I'm never going to be able to work. And so I attacked it like I attack everything else. I spent hours and hours and hours, you know, often 1 or 2 hours a day training. I spent an absolute fortune, but, you know, everyone else didn't have to spend all their money on Pilates and physio and all this sort of stuff. But, well, life's not fair. It's not going to make any difference. Either I have the life I want or I don't. And went out and did what I could. There was like 2 paths I could go down in life as far as looking after my health or not looking after my health. That's the long story around the cookbook.
Yeah, well, that's a great distinction. We take it for granted. That's basically what you just said, is we take it for granted, those of us who aren't doing it. So it's kind of you and generous of you to make that point to us, because I don't know that I've ever thought of it as taking it for granted. I'm just going to do whatever I like to do. I am curious about
gone, you'll miss it.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. This is totally valuable on so many levels. And I appreciate you. This is why I don't like a scripted conversation, because I think about so many people just in my life, never mind listeners, that to have this conversation and to hear things framed the way that you do, it doesn't even sound judgy. it just sounds like here's a matter of fact, like, take care of yourself. So I really appreciate that. I'm curious about something, and this is way off topic, but do you have an opinion about marijuana? Like with this whole medical marijuana thing, do you guys have it in Australia? Does your studies cross over with that, with the cancer? Am I allowed to ask?
Yeah, I must admit, I'm not an authority on that. And it's an evolving space as far as legislation here. So I'm even not up to date with where it's at this point in time because it's not quite my area. So I'm not sure that I can really comment on that. I don't know enough about it. I haven't been involved in any of that in any areas. So I don't know. I can't fill you in.
No, and that's okay. I just didn't know if it came up because if with you doing all this research, to me, like alcohol, cigarettes, and weed kind of all could land in the same bucket depending on what you're looking at. So that was where that came from. Wow. So do you want to, it's so impressive to me. I got to tell you, I'm in awe, and I'm so glad that you came on.
Oh,
When I think about all that you accomplished, and you don't have to be doing any of this. You're a surgeon. You don't have to be spending your time talking to people and educating and helping on this level, right? Like you've already worked really hard and have this, you've done a lot of work to get to everywhere that you got. So I'm wildly impressed. And I just have to say that to you. So
thank you.
Yeah, so much respect and so much that I'm learning. So the last piece of the Dr. Samantha Pillay, it's so pretty, I don't want to mess it up, Pillay puzzle, is another part that you want to help the children with, which insert your books now, right? And can you tell us where that idea came from, what you're trying to accomplish with the children, and that aspect of your service to the world?
Yeah, I actually had to give a talk to high school students yesterday. So I think when I was growing up, I really didn't have any strong female role models. It was like I started doing medicine, I wanted to do surgery, and guys would be, if a guy said they wanted to do surgery, oh my God, can you imagine? People were just like in awe. As a girl, if I said I want to do surgery, they'd be like, oh, really? Why? Don't you want to have kids? When I was in my 20s dating, the guys would say, oh, they wouldn't say, I'm training to be a surgeon. They'd say to girls at the bar, I'm a surgeon. And I'd be like, oh my God. And I'd say, if I said to a guy, when I was dating in the 1990s, I'm training to be a surgeon, that was like a conversation killer. The sort of guy I was not interested in a woman who was training to be a surgeon in the 1990s. So there's a whole lot of issues relating to gender biases and it relates to society, the glass ceiling, all of that issue. It's about self-respect. It's about how women see women, how men see women. It's behind the gender pay gap. It contributes to domestic violence. It's a massive issue in our society still. I mean, obviously, there's even other aspects in the States at the moment that create discussion about gender equality. So I felt that career gender stereotypes and self-belief, which is the other big thing. You see, it's about women believing in themselves to overcome that and change. Start to form age 3. So when I looked at the problem, I thought, where's the biggest bang for my buck as far as my time and energy? Because I'm a reasonably busy person. So I thought, because if you go out there and start preaching about gender issues, everyone's just going to stop listening. Whereas you have a beautiful, colourful picture book that everyone has delightful and then has a sort of subtle message, then maybe I can resonate not just with the next generation to change their way of self-belief and their dreams, but also the parents or the adults buying the books. And, it's much easier to promote a message when you've got delightful children's picture book images. So I consciously thought about how I could best have an impact in this space. And I started off with when I'm a surgeon. So, obviously the main character is a girl. And I wanted to explain to people that surgery wasn't just about seeing patients and operating on patients, which is a lot of people, that's all they think about a surgeon. That's, it could be medical research, you could, it might involve travel, public speaking, running a business, writing children's books, there's a whole lot of stuff you could do that leadership and the surgical career creates to allow a child to think about it. And that was my second book after the cookbook. and with it was a colouring activity book. So yes, if anyone is feeling like some adult fun, they can go to my website and download the free colouring pages for the activity books and colouring. Might be different to the usual sort, or they might have some young people in their lives that they could pretend they were downloading it for. And I then I have loved business. So I've ended up being an entrepreneur. I have a very entrepreneurial spirit, and love the idea of entrepreneurship. So I decided to do another book, again, The Young Girl, when I'm an entrepreneur. And the series has grown in its depth. So the activity book has, globalization, acquisition, mergers, like, so in word searches, not the usual thing you'd have in children's books. And the pictures have hidden messages in the sense that, and then I write backstory on my website that you can delve into deeper meaning on the images. So, for example, when I'm an entrepreneur, one of the images, she's reading the newspaper. We can actually go to my website and read the actual articles on the newspaper in the image that I've written. Obviously, in the picture book, you can just see it's a newspaper, it's too small to read. Or there's things like when I'm an entrepreneur, there's a picture where there's a young girl riding a unicorn. So it highlights the key qualities of an entrepreneur. So one of them is I'll do things differently. So that thinking out the square is very important with entrepreneurship. And she's riding a unicorn, which is often associated with doing things differently. But a unicorn company is also $1 billion, startup that's still owned by its founders. So she's wearing a striped T-shirt in the color of the logo of Stripe, the pay platform, which is one of the biggest unicorn companies. So if you know your business, you'll know when you look at the image of a young girl on a unicorn that there's a deeper meaning. And just little things like that. One, she's got a picture of a dishwasher, and Josephine Cochrane is a entrepreneur that really hasn't got the recognition she deserves because she, in the 1800s, invented the dishwasher. Now, there's not that many inventions, the same year as the car, that have been around that long that everybody has, and yet she's not known. So there's these hidden meanings that people can go and read through the website to sort of allow my message to spread, not just about changing young girls' self-belief, but extend it to as many ages as I possibly can from a children's picture book.
That is brilliant. How creative. I understood as soon as you said she was riding a unicorn. I don't know that I would have made the connection with Stripe, the company, but wow, that is brilliant. It is a problem. It's such a problem still, not for necessarily frontline jobs, but it seems like I have a friend that worked for a company for over 30 years. When she replaced the VP that retired, they never made her a VP. They kept her as a director. But then other people, men coming around, get the VP titles. It was like that's the stuff that doesn't even in that environment, the women don't feel comfortable going in to ask or to confront that. Well, why do they get that? Because then it's like, oh, I don't need the title. I'll just do a good job. Like there's a lot of chatter, I think, in our heads. So I think that's part of the problem. And then there's the society part where it's creating this culture. Am I on the right track with my perspective?
Yeah, it is that glass ceiling. It's like what I was saying, the low level of surgeons. We've had equal numbers, and I think the state's the same, of women, females and males getting into medical school, equal numbers for 30 years. And yet it's that top that you're talking about, that VP, that doesn't get through. And that's why the children's picture books are related to male-dominated, high-end careers. So the next book, it's just gone on pre-order on Amazon, and it will be available for delivery from August the 9th, is When I'm an Astronaut, which has been so much fun because obviously I had no personal space experience to bring to the book, and I was able to spend 6 months researching astronaut training, meet a whole lot of people in the space industry, Andy Thomas, who's a NASA astronaut, retired. He did 3 space shuttle missions, has written a testimonial for the book. I've been able to be lost in space, which obviously in my 50s as a surgeon, I never thought that I would be creatively and virtually entering the space field. And so it's a great way to sort of bring attention to women at those very high level positions, which is exactly what you were talking about.
Yeah, that's fabulous. I was a truck driver in my early 20s. So that was 20 something years ago. I was definitely in the minority. It's grown since, and I was by myself for most of it. Eventually I ended up teaming, but people didn't even, that's not even like VP level or doctor or any of that. So many women would say to me, I always wanted to do that, but, and it could be truck driver, it could be anything. Standing out, trying something different, breaking the norm. So from you trying to reach it from youth to get them thinking about it different and standing up for themselves early, I think that that's going to just have such a extensive ripple. And it's such a unique strategy that the impact is going to be pretty impressive. That's my perspective.
I hope so. I mean, I think, I'm lucky I've had 20 years as a surgeon, and obviously the incredible privilege to have such an impact on people's lives. I don't know, I think I've treated over 10,000 people in my state or something like that. But now writing the books, I'm talking to people all around the world. And, obviously, it's not, I'm not getting paid like I got for surgery, but it's great as far as leaving a legacy and thinking, gosh, I can really feel like I've made a difference on this planet. When you were talking about young girls, it's that self-belief, and the dedication of the book is dream big, aim high, all of the books. And that is really the thing. So like, I didn't even want to dream about getting into medicine. I thought I'd never get in. I didn't want to tell people I was going to be a surgeon. I didn't even tell my parents I'd applied to get in medicine. My dad was a doctor, because it was like, I probably won't get in, more people think of that career choice and is it feminine enough, and always holding myself back. And that's so true for so many women. It's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do that. Or, a career was something you did until you had kids, and then you either stopped work or went part-time. And if you worked full-time when you had kids, it meant you didn't care about your kids, or you had a full-time career if you didn't want to have kids. Just all this self-talk that we give ourselves. So one of the things I say to the young girls when I'm talking to them is, have that dream, have the passion of what you want to do, and then have a dream. And then I say, take your dream, double it again. That's what I think we don't do. So I think that, and I go, no. Now double your dream again. Now you're talking.
It's interesting that you bring up the dreaming part. I'm not a parent, but I have my 18-year-old niece who is probably the closest thing I'll ever have to a daughter. And I had the honor of spending a couple of days with her. And we were talking, and I was like, I said something about her having to take care of me in my old age because she's the one. And she's like, well, you said you're going to be a billionaire. And I said, well, yeah, but it's still going to be your job. I said, but when I'm a billionaire, what do you want? Like, where do you want to go? Where would you like, your dream house and all of that? And she couldn't think outside of survival needs. She didn't even have the possibility to dream in her mind. She's never thought outside of that box. And that was like the most heartbreaking part of the visit for me. I'm like, how do I get her? You're talking about doubling it right now. And there's a baseline depending on who influenced their lives or things that have happened. There's a horrible baseline that we have to overcome to teach these girls that anything is possible. I guess I'm validating your point that I've seen it firsthand. And it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, someone was actually, it's really interesting. I had this sort of idea that maybe through a children's picture book, I wouldn't just connect with kids. And it's funny when you have these sorts of things, because you sort of think that's, that's a stupid dream, Sam. It's a picture book for like, 5-year-olds. And then what you're talking about, people have sort of got it for graduation presents. How they give off sometimes the children's books for graduation presents. And then there was another person whose daughter wanted to be the next like Elon Musk or something, and was 11, so much older than you'd have for a picture book with a few, with pictures and not, just a sentence on each page, with the when I'm an entrepreneur. But because it sort of describes the key qualities of an entrepreneur, like, like one of the other pictures, she's standing on the shoulders of a giant, and stuff. So she has actually memorized it as a mantra and recites it every day. She's got this vision of being a billionaire. And I'm just like, so it's just so much fun. I mean, obviously being a surgeon, I didn't have any creative outlet. And so I don't know if it's maybe, you're obviously in a creative space already, but, maybe it's a midlife crisis for me, sort of suddenly going, well, I've been very science orientated, obviously, all my life. And as a surgeon, there's no creativity in the operating room. To actually be able to do something creative and then see it have its own wings and where it's going, I'm having a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is interesting that you have both sides of the brain going. Another part of my career was always floral, but I always gravitated towards the business side versus making arrangements. Most people made arrangements and they didn't grasp the business side. So it is a very unique talent to be able to understand both sides, like you said, the science and the creative. That's special.
Yeah, so it's really funny that you say that, because I've always had a bit of a joke, because obviously surgery and owning a surgical center practice is quite stressful. And at times I used to sort of joke, I'm a single mum, I've got a teenager, my son's 14. I've joked a long time about, I should have been a florist. I could just sit there and just create and make beautiful flowers. So it's always been this bit of a joke. And then obviously with COVID, there's one of the things that last holidays I did was this masterclass on flower arrangements by Maurice, famous Californian, I think, person. Anyway, it's really bad of me not to remember the name. And did this masterclass on flower arrangement, was going and making flowers, because it is nice to be in that creative space. But then I can't help it. I've got this entrepreneurship brain. It's like, maybe I should buy a floral business. You can't help myself. I've got to apply it. And I think as an author, that's what's sort of slightly unique, in the sense that I've had 20 years in business. So, profit and loss is not something that scares me, or a contract, or signing on full-time employees or whatever. So then coming in as an author, as a self-published author, a lot of authors, you really struggle with the business side or the marketing side or whatever, whereas I'm like, yeah, another software program, sure.
Yes. It's funny because I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. Never. Growing up in flowers, everybody would say, why don't you buy your own shop? And I would say, well, why would I leave my safe company with, medical insurance and access to all this inventory that doesn't have to come out of my pocket? And I didn't want that responsibility. So never got in that mindset until I figured out my purpose. And it's such a big shift. And now I almost feel like entrepreneurs are in this secret community where we know more things than corporate America, because we have to be that nimble and cutting edge and stuff. And that there's probably going to be less and less big companies. Like we've learned the last couple of years, we don't need property to house cubicles full of people. We don't need to pay people $20 an hour to answer the phone. Like between technology and evolution, just so much has changed. Like I'm grateful that I discovered this side of it. It's not as scary. And I don't have those people, to your point about the glass ceilings and stuff, wondering, am I not getting promoted, or am I not getting that next thing because I'm a woman, because I'm an open-minded, out loud woman? Like, I don't want to have a filter. I want to be able to share ideas. Entrepreneurs talk a different language. We can say, if let's say I go to your website to find one of these articles and I find a mistake, of a grammar error or something, if I reached out to you, you would be grateful that I pointed it out to you versus
Absolutely.
the office environment where it's like, oh, she said, like I'm not good enough, like friction. It's a different culture. And I don't like corporate culture anymore.
Yeah, it's, I mean, I love entrepreneurship because I love inventing and creating things. And I probably do, part of me likes risk. If you do medicine and you choose surgery, you've got to be someone that's prepared to like the adrenaline, like the risk. You're constantly, when you're talking about promotion, as an entrepreneur, you're constantly getting a promotion. Every time you invest in yourself and get a new skill, you're upgrading yourself. I love being able to learn. Just a workaholic, but it's not just a workaholic. I'm a studyaholic. I'll get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and, when I'm on holidays and, work for 12 hours on a computer, whether I'm doing anything, something to do with publishing a new book or watching a, class on flower arranging or, doing spreadsheets and staff pays. I'm constantly doing things across diverse areas. And one of the other things I've written about is, when I started writing, it was just, I kind of justified it to the people I knew as a sort of silly little hobby because, how ridiculous. Obviously, I enjoyed it, so I put more and more time and energy into it. The unexpected thing was, I wasn't surprised by the fact that there were things that I had learned over the years as a surgeon and having a business for 20 years that were useful as an author. But what I never expected were there were things that I would learn from writing that helped me as a surgeon. And that's one of the articles that I've written, just from mental acuity or whether my, PowerPoint presentations and use of Canva is better, but strategic thinking outside the square, putting yourself in a new industry. I mean, surgery might sound like it's stressful, and it is, but, just like flying a plane, once you've been doing it for 20 years, you're not putting yourself on the line like you are when you first train. And keeping yourself mentally agile and on the cliff edge allows you to perform at your peak. Whether you are, an Olympic athlete or no matter what you do, you have to kind of keep yourself on that edge to be at your best. So when you're doing something you've been doing for 20 years, it's hard to do that. But when I can learn other stuff about surgery, but going on a podcast when you haven't been on a podcast or putting yourself out there and doing something scary is a really good skill to keep yourself at the top of your game as a surgeon.
I think that's the definition of living. If we're not experiencing those things and learning and growing, then we're dying. That's kind of my take on it. It baffles me why more people don't. It's the difference between sitting in the bar or something else to do. If that something else is personal development, I just think it enhances quality of life. At least that's been my experience. It does impact the different facets of our life, like you just said. But I still would be scared to death of surgery even 20 years later. I don't know how you do blood. I don't know how you do responsibility. So that's another wow, mind blowing. So I've taken so much of your time, but is there anything that we haven't covered that you want to share with the audience?
No, I would say the next exciting thing for me is having the launch on the 9th of August of When I'm an Astronaut. If people want to pre-order the book through Amazon, they can with When I'm an Astronaut with my name. They sign up to my mailing list. I'll be promoting a launch team for people who'll be able to, I'll let them know when there'll be an opportunity to download the ebook for free because every author tries to get as many reviews as possible when they get a new book out there. So that's the next exciting part of my journey. So anyone who wants to come along for the ride, it's a free ticket to space to join me and doesn't cost you 52 million or whatever it is that they charge you for the tickets.
I love it. Join me go into space. That's wonderful. Okay, so August 9th. So that's coming up. That's pretty exciting.
Yes, that's what I'm going to be working on the next few weeks. Is like, oh my God, I've got another book coming out, book 6, and the activity book 6 and 7, I think, coming out. So kind of exciting again, I hope that I can inspire as many people. I hope that next time I speak to you, Bobby, you'll be even healthier. And I haven't had a cigarette since that podcast, Sam.
You really have given me a lot to think about personally. You definitely have. This has been an impactful conversation. And I realized, so last year I went through a bunch of just family stuff and I had gotten away from podcasting. And when I was podcasting every day during COVID and multiple times, I didn't know it at the time. But on the other side of it, it's so, even when it was just me, I was developing my skills. But now since the summit and the last few months, as I was trying to make up for lost ground, it's like, this is what lights me up. I learned something from all the different guests. It's not even about my skill set anymore or my reflection. It's about being connected all over the world, learning from experts on things that I would have never even thought I wanted to go deep on. And the conversations, like I'm talking to a surgeon right now, like that is amazing. A surgeon, author, person who very possibly could get me to put my last cigarette in my mouth or have had my last cigarette, like you are.
Don't you tease me, you'd make my day.
Yeah, like this is just it's just good stuff. And I'm just very grateful that I've had this opportunity to talk to you.
Oh, I've had so much fun. It's been great to chat to you too. I've loved it. Hopefully we'll do it again sometime, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'll need the update. But you're describing having found your passion and your purpose. You with what you've just said, Bobby, you are a born podcaster. You are a born interviewer. Because of what you've just described, it gives you that opportunity. So keep doing it because you've found the right thing to do.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you saying that. But yeah, we'll definitely have to get together again, maybe on your 10th or 20th or 50th book. I mean, there's a lot of things that girls need to grow up to be.
Yeah, there is. Or dive in on one of the many health topics, and I can get an update on how you're going.
Yeah, I think you're onto something. Maybe we'll have you on 321 to talk about that health piece. Because just connecting those dots on alcohol was so significant tonight. That would be a great topic for over there. So thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
I will see you next time, Samantha. Thanks again.